So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our Wellstudio Coliving webinar, an introduction to co-living interior design. I'm just going to share screen and then we'll get underway. So welcome to our webinar. My name is Tom Manuel. I am the founder and director of Wellstudio Architecture. I'm a fully qualified UK architect, a member of the RIBA and the ARB. And I'm also a well-accredited professional, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. So I've got 10 years experience of running my own London-based practice, designing real-life buildings for real-life people. And we take our designs right through from concept stage to building and completion on site. I'm also a co-founder of Conscious Co-Living, the global co-living consultancy, who I'm proud to say that we at Wellstudio are partners with in the co-living industry. And I've lived in communities all my life. And I'm really passionate about community design and how we can create buildings which not only fulfill the practical requirements of architecture and are aesthetically pleasing, but also facilitate and support community. So before we dive into talking about interior design itself, I'd just like to set some foundational pieces of work which underpin the design philosophy of our co-living buildings. So the first one which we would like to refer to is the Conscious Co-Living Manifesto. So Conscious Co-Living have created a really great framework for how you can create co-living buildings which help people thrive. And that means connecting them with themselves, with each other, and with nature, and operating in a way that supports mental and physical well-being, community, and is environmentally sustainable. And in order to do this, there are 4 pillars of co-living which need to be put in place. The first one is aligned policy and regulation. The second one is a sustainable financial model. The third one is supportive spatial design, and we'll talk more about how Wellstudio comes into that in a moment. And the fourth one is wise management and operation. So together with Conscious Co-Living, our partners in the co-living industry, we have a co-living library. And this is a knowledge resource that's been built up over a number of years through our visits to different co-living buildings around the world, our talking to residents that live in co-living, and our research online in terms of co-living design and best practice examples of co-living design. So what we really can bring to the table with our projects is therefore this knowledge base and resource that informs our co-living design thinking and helps us to develop co-living which really helps communities thrive and operate sustainably and support mental and physical well-being. The third element to our underpinning basis of knowledge and design ethos is the fact that we are well accredited professionals. So for those of you that haven't heard about it, there's something called the Well Building Standard. It's a globally recognized standard for how you can design and operate buildings which support mental and physical well-being. And we at Wellstudio, last year, we studied this standard and over a year or so and took a number of exams to pass the qualification and become well-accredited professionals. So we are able to support you in bringing that knowledge to your building design. And then finally, all of these elements really come together in our 10 elements of well-being co-living design, which we show here. And these quite briefly are maximizing natural light and using artificial light, which functions on a circadian rhythm, using natural ventilation and supporting good air quality in buildings, having sound and supporting good levels of acoustic separation in buildings, as well as making sure people can have conversations with each other in community spaces, warmth and creating buildings which are cozy, well insulated and low energy, touch using natural materials that are nice to touch, community, a number of ways we'll explain later of how we try to design our buildings to facilitate community, nature, connecting residents to nature, both externally and internally, sustainably, building our buildings with sustainable materials, and that they would also operate sustainably, movement, designing our buildings to encourage physical movement and exercise throughout the building, and aesthetics, designing our buildings to look and function beautifully. So that brings us on to the first chapter of today's webinar, Co-Living Interior Design Features. So we at Wellstudio Coliving have created what we call the Co-Living Building Design Framework. And this is really a matrix of all the different co-living building design features which we think are really best practice examples and which support well-being, community and sustainability. And we've brought these all into this matrix, and we've arranged them in orders of scale of types of space. So if you imagine a co-living building, the smallest type of space in a building would be your room. So there are certain design features you can have in your room, such as a sociable furniture to encourage community, or a curved wall to facilitate well-being. At the slightly larger scale, where you have a number of different rooms in a cluster, you might want to bring in things like a community kitchen or a community corridor to facilitate community, or design the space with dual aspect feature, which means that with windows facing in two different directions to support well-being. And at the whole building scale, again, just there are many features which you can implement to facilitate community well-being and sustainability, such as a community courtyard, having the correct solar orientation, or designing the building with good levels of natural thermal insulation to reduce energy use. So just to dive into a few examples of some of these design features, here we have bedroom sanctuaries. So we really believe in co-living that it's important to design the bedrooms or studio spaces where private individuals have their space, to create a sense of sanctuary and a space which is good, has good acoustic separation from other community spaces, which has windows which connect the residents to natural light and preferably views out to nature, such as a tree outside, that are constructed from natural materials and provide biophilic connection through indoor planting, that use natural cottons and linens to provide skin and thermal comfort and reduce allergic reactions, and materials which are also sustainably sourced and reduce environmental impact and don't have volatile organic compounds, therefore providing good air quality, and a color scheme which promotes visual harmony and relaxation and sleep. Another design feature that might be of interest is a curved wall. So we find that curved walls are an often overlooked design element, but really have a great potential to improve well-being in co-living buildings. So there's an example here of a curved wall in a corridor at the Nunhead Nature Flat in London, where the space narrows, and rather than having a right-angled wall there, which would impact on the amount of natural light that was coming into the corridor and restrict that, and also aesthetically be a little bit of an abrupt change in corridor width, using a curved wall actually creates a pleasing and natural feminine flow of space, which promotes well-being, and it maximizes the natural light coming into the corridor from the two windows surrounding it, and it can be constructed of timber, which is sustainably sourced, and a natural material pleasing to touch, which supports well-being. Another cluster feature is a nook. So in any kind of shared communal space in a co-living building, it can be really nice to add in a few nooks. Nooks are smaller spaces which are off of a larger space and provide a sense of psychological safety, ideal for introverts. And they often also form an acoustic barrier to the space surrounding them, so they facilitate more intimate conversation. They can incorporate indoor planting and provide a biophilic boost, and they can often be constructed of natural materials, pleasing to touch, sustainably sourced, with no volatile organic compounds. Another cluster feature, which it can be really beneficial to incorporate into your co-living building, are shared kitchen islands. So kitchen islands allow two people to cook simultaneously and have a conversation with each other while doing it. So this really promotes community. And if you actually add to this some dining tables nearby the kitchen islands, you can also allow for verbal conversation with people at the dining tables, therefore again improving a community social function of the kitchen. These if you put these islands near to a natural light source, such as some large windows, you can really make the most of natural lighting in the space and views over the city. So another cluster feature which we again are really passionate about at Wellstudio is the community corridor. So we feel that often in co-living buildings, the corridor is an overlooked space that's really quite dark, only artificially lit, no natural light, lots of doors in a long narrow space which all look the same with no identifying features of residents. But there are a number of elements that you can put into a corridor to make it into a community corridor. So little setback nooks where you have the entrance doors to different rooms can be placed, can be built in, and doors incorporated and seating incorporated into these, which allows people to stop and have a conversation, and also allows individual residents to have a little notice board with identifying features of themselves in the corridor and provides visual interest. And if you couple this with some artwork on the walls and access to natural light sources nearby, then this can really make the corridor into a really wonderful experience of a space and a place which supports community well-being and is sustainable. So what's the conclusion? Consider the different scales of a co-living building and the different design features you could add at each scale, which would support sustainability, community, and well-being for residents. So chapter 2 is facilitating social interaction. So in co-living buildings, it's really important to think about how residents use the building and how you can support their social interaction. And the first way in which we do this at Wellstudio, we call going with the flow. So it's looking at circulation and meeting points in a co-living building. And as my assistant also points out, this is now known in millennial language as meet cute points, an amusing or charming first encounter between two characters which develops into a relationship. And you can imagine these kind of random interactions happening in a co-living building, and the question is, how can you design to encourage this in your building? So the first way we look at this in Wellstudio is looking at movement paths. So we take a plan of the proposed building, or if we're lucky enough to already have a building to visit, we visit the building and we actually record the movement paths of people moving through the building or estimate them. And by doing this, we can look at where there are crossover points in these movement paths, where there's likely to be moments of social interaction where either people cross paths or they stop to do something like check their mail or go to unlock their bike. And then what we can do is start to augment these natural points of social interaction with further design features that support community. So for instance, at the area where you check your mail, you can incorporate a bench next to the mailboxes so that someone can sit down while they're waiting for a friend to check their mail, and then they might bump into other people in the building, start a conversation and facilitate community. Or you can do something similar with a lift or a staircase where you have a little nook nearby that, or could be in the recess of a window, or actually in this example, underneath the staircase itself. Again, allowing a place for someone to stop, maybe read a book, and then actually be able to interact with other residents in the building. The third example here is where you have an area of cycle parking. This could be also incorporate a bench into this area. So that bench could also form part of the cycle parking or just be placed next to it. And again, you create a stopping point, a place where people can sit and chat as they naturally have bumped into each other while locking up their bikes. Example 4 is the lobby or entrance space of a co-living building. Most co-living buildings have these. Some function better than others, and we think that it's really important to make the most of these spaces, provide ample seating and opportunities for interaction while people are entering and leaving the building. 5 is also an example which many co-living buildings have already, but again, there are some really good examples of this and also some not so optimal examples. So here, to design that space well, as we've already explained, is really important to facilitate social interaction. And the final one here is the laundry space. Laundry spaces are one of the best spaces in co-living buildings to allow for social interaction. People have to come and wash their clothes, so they will be using this space. And if you then augment the space with seating and an area of soft seating, television, etc., people can sit here and they will bump into each other. And because they essentially have nothing better to do, they will strike up a conversation and community will be formed. So what's the conclusion? Consider how you can augment the natural movement paths and practical need points of co-living residents with additional design elements which support social interaction. The next element of this chapter is the dimensions of community. So compare these two floor plans. One has a number of community spaces which are separated by walls and doors with no visual connection. So in this example, someone in the dining or kitchen area would not be able to see other people in the family areas or the media areas. And because they couldn't see them, they wouldn't know to interact with them. And so social interaction would be reduced. Consider the other open floor plan example, and you can see that here there's a visual connection to someone who is standing in the kitchen, looking to the dining area, the family area, the media area, and almost out to the front door and the garden at the rear. And this allows for visual connection and then more social interaction to take place. Now, we'd also know that this needs to be balanced with acoustic separation, and sometimes you do need to acoustically separate areas out. But this is really worth considering in co-living design, thinking about how your floor plan allows for visual connection. The parameters of visual connection is generally between 0 and 22 meters. Another type of connection or communication in a co-living building is verbal. Verbal communication plays a really essential part in community, and it's important to understand and design for the two sort of ranges of verbal communication. So the smaller range, close verbal, is between 1.2 and 2.1 meters. The further range between 2.1 and 3.7 meters, and depending on what kind of conversation you want to encourage, whether it be more quiet, personal, or louder communication, these are good parameters to bear in mind. Another element of communication is actually the closer, more intimate togetherness and touch communication, and designing some nooks into a co-living building and also shared seating areas can really allow this and support this. So you can see on the left here a couple sitting together on a shared seating area, and they can actually get close to each other and have physical connection. You can also design nooks where people can just have much more intimate conversations, quieter conversations between each other, facing each other, and that can be really good for community. So what's the conclusion? When designing, consider the three types of connection: visual, verbal, and touch togetherness, and their distances in your building. Right, and then the final sort of element of this community chapter is what we call the law of increasing social interaction. And this can also be known as, why does everyone end up in the kitchen at a party? So consider at your average house party, where there are a few rooms, including a kitchen. Why is it that as you go through the evening, more and more people seem to be hanging out in the kitchen? It doesn't naturally seem like the most comfortable area to be at the party. But the way we think about it is that there are practical reasons why people need to go into the kitchen. Maybe it's to get another drink or to wash up their glass. And because they move into the kitchen for these practical reasons, but there are other people already there, they strike up a conversation, they end up staying longer. And then the chances of them bumping into someone else coming into the kitchen and them staying and striking up a conversation and staying longer increase almost exponentially. So you kind of get this kind of crowd reaction to the space of the kitchen. And imagine a co-living space. This same kind of law also takes place, although it's probably a lot slower acting and a lot more kind of varied by many other factors. But essentially, imagine that you've got a shared co-living space, maybe with a kitchen area shared by all the residents, a large kitchen table where people can sit together, and some soft seating and table to the side. Also, there might be a route through the space, for instance, to the garden area. When one person walks into the space and they're making a cup of tea, it might happen that then, while they're doing that, another person walks in with the same idea. And because they start talking, they stay longer, and then the chances of a third person joining increase, and that third person might join and also get involved in a conversation. So before you know it, over the course of an afternoon, you'll have 4 or so people hanging out in the kitchen. And then as they're there for longer and they stay to chat and have a cup of tea, more and more people start to join that space and stay in that space. So by the time you get to the evening, there's a whole bunch of people in the space, and they all decide to cook a meal and have dinner together. And this is just a naturally occurring way that community will happen, just with a well-designed space. So what's the conclusion? Look to create community spaces which combine many functions together: kitchen, dining, living space, garden access, to encourage the law of increasing social interaction. Right, so moving on to chapter 3 now, our final chapter of the webinar today. This chapter is all about internal fit out. So fixtures, furniture and equipment, biophilic design, furniture layouts. So here, this is when you've really designed your sort of spaces, but now you're looking at the kind of furniture and the way the furniture is laid out in the space, and what kind of furniture and what kind of finishes. And the way we always do this at Wellstudio is, first we look at some good precedents for how we would like to fit out the space, which are aligned with the branding of the company and the ethos of the co-living space in question. And then we might look at a color scheme and choose colors which align with the company's brand identity. And then we might bring in furniture, fixtures and equipment, which also meet the practical requirements of the co-living space, but are aligned with their brand and align with the color scheme that we've developed. And also some planting elements as well, which do the same. And then we would look at arranging these all throughout the space, and proposing to the co-living client the different arrangements of furniture which might work for different scenarios in the space. We're quite a fan of having furniture which can be adapted and configured for different activities, and we'd also apply this same design thinking to the bedroom spaces to make sure that those are really well thought out and aligned with the branding of the company, and that all of these spaces support community, well-being and sustainability. So that's the end of our design insights chapters, I should say. And now we would like to go to the next section of our webinar, where we just give you a brief overview of some of the services which we offer at Wellstudio. So here are some of our products. So just to mention, before we talk about the interior design specific products, that we have some larger products which we can use to really help you on your co-living scheme. So if you have a piece of land, or you have an existing building that you would like to develop for co-living, we have our initial feasibility study package, which allows us to give you a quick overview of how many bedrooms you might be able to get on your site, how large the building might be able to be in regards to the planning constraints of the area, and also working with one of our cost consultants. We can actually start to give you an idea of what the construction costs might be, what the rental income, and what the return on investment essentially might be for such a proposal. And we can do that with either new build sites or existing buildings. And then we also offer a further package, which is the actual building design, whole building design package, which gives you all the architectural services you would normally encounter for your co-living building. And then just taking a little bit of a further closer look at the actual interior design of your co-living building, and how Wellstudio can help you there. We have some interior design products. So we actually have 4 interior design products. The first one I've mentioned already, it's the Well Building Standard certification. So if you're interested in gaining certification for your building under the Well Building Standard, we can come and look at the building, recommend which features need to be improved or put in place in order to then apply for certification and manage the whole process of applying and liaising with the Well Building Institute on obtaining certification. We then have our community optimization package, which and I'll just go through to these now actually. Community optimization package, which includes the features we've already described. So looking at movement paths through the building and how they can be augmented, looking at the dimensions of community and how these can be improved, and looking at this law of increasing social interaction, how that can really be made the most of in your co-living space. The third package which we offer is our interior design package, where we look at all the interior design elements as we've described to help optimize your building for your brand and to support sustainability, community and well-being. And then the fourth package we have is the biophilic design package. So this is where we really take a much more detailed look at the planting that you have in your co-living space, both internally and externally, and where these plants are placed, what kind of plants they are, how those align with the brand and support human well-being. And it even includes an element on medicinal plants, which can be a really exciting feature to add to your building. So Well Building Standard we've mentioned already. So those are some of the products we offer, and hopefully that was very interesting, a little introduction there to co-living interior design, and also just an overview of a little bit more about Wellstudio Coliving. If you're interested in finding out more and you have a co-living project that you're working on, we'd really love to talk to you. Please do book a free consultation with us. You can visit our website, www.wellstudiocoliving.com. You can send us an email to hello@wellstudioarchitecture.com, or give us a phone call on the number on the screen here. And also, please do check out our Instagram channel. It shows a lot of our most recent projects and things that we're doing and exciting things we're working on out there. So hope you've enjoyed this webinar, and please do stay in touch and look forward to seeing you again soon.